Billiken fans, welcome back. It's Zach Miller and Peter Hale. It's the Midtown Madness Podcast. Before we get going, again, I can't thank you all enough, the people that have stuck with us and listened to us this entire time. And if you're new to the podcast, to the show, to the channel, hit the like and subscribe button, please, whether you're on YouTube or the podcast app, wherever you get those. It really does help. Comment, like. The comments really do help too. If there's something we talk about on the show and you got something to say, we'd love to hear it. We'll talk about it on the next show. We'll answer your comment. We can use it as a launching point for a discussion next show. It just be part of the show. We love getting feedback like that. It's season 5. Once again, 2 Men and a Garden is bringing you the Midtown Madness Podcast. Looking for the absolute best salsa on the shelf that's also local. 2 Men in a Garden is the go-to salsa you're looking for. It's made fresh, simple ingredients. If you're sensitive about certain things, they have sugar-free. It's all still has a ton of flavor. Whether you're dipping, topping, or mixing, I'm always dipping. I'm not in the kitchen cooking. I can't cook. 2 Men in a Garden salsa is here to elevate your mid-game snacking. Whether the Billikens are down 30, it improves the game day experience. Visit them online at 2meninthegarden.com. Shop your favorite flavors. Check out their partner products as well. They have a great story with Kitchen Hub STL. Follow them on social media at 2 Men Salsa on Instagram and Twitter. Pete, my goodness, man. This is a jam-packed week, and we have a lot to get into. The first of which is a 74-66 win versus Jackson State. By the way, I kind of want to start off by talking about the things we have also after we review the games, because I think there is a lot to get into. Obviously, you have scheduling. There was a lot of talk about. There was talk about goals with this team, where we expected them to be at the end of the season, where they are now. So we're going to talk goals. We're going to talk the scheduling, and really, I kind of want to get into just kind of whether or not the schedule they chose was kind of the right schedule for the goals they had, or the goals that you're seeing now that they had. But yeah, we're going to get into it all. We're going to start off with that Jackson State game. And Pete, this is one of those games where I'm so incredibly frustrated. It's on a Monday, and I have so many emotions and thoughts. And by the time we get to Sunday, the Billikens may have fixed those things, and they kind of have, but not really. But this is one I'm kind of also glad that it's not, because the things that I might say right after that game are not the things that I think are true.
Yeah, I think that's right, Zach. And really in this game, it was that first half, right? I mean, it seemed like a first half where I just couldn't have gone any worse. Jackson State, as you and I previewed before that game, was winless at the time. And then they were in the midst of a 13 or 14 game opening stretch, right in the middle of that. I think this was game 8, where they were playing all road games. They won't even go play at home until, for a few more weeks. And 0-7, you and I said they're probably a little bit better than it would indicate, because they had played a brutally hard schedule, multiple ranked teams, all on the road, really tough. And what we saw, yeah, they're not the worst team in the country, but at the same time, it's a bye game at home, and you've just got to be better than SLU was in the first half, especially, Zach. I mean, it seemed like you in particular saw a lot of things in that half that really got to you.
Yeah, I look back at kind of, and this isn't me going back to the Travis Ford era, but with the Travis Ford era, the product on the court was so rough that I started really finding other parts of the game to try to enjoy. And one of those was kind of keep an eye on the bench. Harriman was on the staff, so watching him work was fun for me. And I really started getting into kind of watching off the ball and off the main, kind of wherever the action is a little bit. And there's so many things that on the court that frustrated me. Players were unsure where the inbounds was. There were multiple times where maybe there was one time I know in particular where Swope was down ready to inbound the ball, and there 4 other players were down the court. The other time was we were inbounding the ball, and was it Jackson State's pressing, and I mean nobody has any idea. Nobody's ready for the press, and so it takes an extra 2 seconds to really get ready to inbound the ball, and it's just like you're putting yourself a little bit like you're making it harder on yourself than it really needs to be. I thought, I'll call out Swope in this one, man. Like, Shirts sent him to the bench, finger wag and all. It was one of the first times I've really seen Shirts animated at a player. And then I thought Swope kind of sulked after that. And I don't know. And of course we're going to talk like this all, like I said in the intro, this all leads up to what happened today with the Chicago State game because, and we get to follow it. That's kind of what's fun about this episode. As much as it's kind of a bummer that we're not able to sound off right away, we get to follow a story. And of course, we saw some really good stuff from Swope in the Chicago State game, and I can't wait to talk about it. But I thought, he really dug the Billikens a hole in that one, and he did it kind of himself, as he did in the next game against. It was. I thought he did it again against San Francisco. So I don't know. Swope is really frustrating me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but I do want to remind you, Zach, in this game, he had 18 points, 5
Yes,
rebounds,
I know.
7 assists, and somehow only 2 turnovers. And I agree with you that it felt like more than that, right?
Yeah.
Like it just, I think it's clear that he's not playing his true position. He's an undersized shooting guard. He's being forced to be a point guard. And I know those aren't the terms that Shirts uses, but for our purposes, let's just go with that and just say he's a slot over from where he needs to be. Kobe Johnson isn't 100%. Still battling that shoulder, battling some illness this week.
We found out today that more people were ill and injured at San Francisco as well. So
that's right.
It's absolutely crazy. I'm not going to do the line. I'm not going to say the line because it's exhausting, but I mean, it's frustrating.
Yeah. And so I do want to remind people of that. Like as much as you kind of sometimes go, what is he doing? He's not playing his natural position. Right?
Yeah, no, I think, I think we've seen it where this team operates like you give it to your All-American, you run your trigger, give it to your trigger and let him initiate. The more Swope, I think I said it today, that Swope needs to have the ball on a possession in his hands for less than 3 seconds. He's either going to catch and shoot, attack the basket immediately and look for a pass or an open layup. Or he needs to just get rid of the ball and pass and move, start cutting, do all the things off the ball, make winning plays. And I think sometimes he tries to be that Isabel player when really we just need him to make the hustle plays, make the right pass, make the right cut, just make the right move that leads to the play. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know that, I thought it didn't get much better after halftime as well. Players kind of just slogged out of the locker room. It felt like, and I think it's tough also when you watch this team. Robbie is such an unassuming player that I think I told you, Robbie looks so uninterested, and I don't necessarily think he's uninterested. Like a guy who takes his team to the NIT final is not an uninterested basketball player.
Right.
But it's so unassuming that when things go wrong and when he turns the ball over and you're only up 2 on Jackson State or whatever, that you're like, dude, can you show anything? Give me anything? And it kind of adds to the angst, I think.
He's just not a fiery, emotional player. I mean, you did see it, like when I was in St. Louis and got to watch those games, with you a little more up close, I could see his frustration a little bit when things weren't going wrong. And then I will say in the game today, Sunday, as we record this, against Chicago State, he was visibly more vocal. I don't, I don't know if I was just noticing it more or if it was something that he was doing more, but especially early in the second half of this game, the more recent game, you could see him being more vocal. So I do wonder if that's one of those things that in the past week has kind of come up as like you really need to step up here. You are a leader here.
I know it's funny because Schertz did point out in the post game today that Avila, he talked about the days, the way they structure the days leading up to a game, and after a game, it's rest day. Second day is what they call a vitamin day, and the vitamin day is essentially like a repetition day. So it's like get the bare bones of what we want to do. Get your shots up, get the shots in system up, but not. It's like 30, 45 minutes of kind of muscle memory work, I think, is what I would call it. So, but he said that it's an optional day, and Robbie told the team it's mandatory. So, and he said that the team listens to him more than he does Schertz, or they do Schertz. So, I mean, look, I'm not saying he's not a leader. I think when things are going wrong, you want to see your All-American, your leader out there caring emotionally, visibly emotional. And I think of course it varies by player to player, right? And so you can't necessarily be upset with it if that's just not how they are. You look at, Dwayne Evans was kind of one of those guys he was intense. I think intensity is more what I'm looking for. Not necessarily vocal leadership or being upset or, yelling. I just, have that look in your eye. Have that look in your eye that I'm here. So I think that's frustrating a little bit with this team. I think, again, I'm going to go through all these things and now I feel like an asshole because I wrote this all under mental anguish here.
I think one of the things that kind of dovetails nicely with what we were just talking about, Swope, Avila, and you talk about the look in their eyes, but what about their vision? Because it seemed like, we've heard so much about how this offense flows and about how Avila at the top and all the cutters and everything like that, and we're not quite seeing as much action toward the basket as we would like to see, maybe. Yeah. And it seems like you were wondering after this game, after the game we're discussing now, the Jackson State game, were they possibly a little overrated in terms of their vision, their passing up top, or did they just not have the right personnel, or what's going on there?
I mean, I ask you always what's going on because I have no idea. I'm just a message board moron. You lived the college basketball life, whether it was just, carrying a towel, but you were there. So I like to ask you what's going on. But I think, with the vision passing, sometimes I wonder, like, I feel like these guys try to do more than they have to do. Like, you don't have to fit that ball in there. You've got way more options than you don't have to turn it over. You can always pass up that cutter as long as you look them off and you're threatening to make that pass. I think looking them off and finding the next open and recycling it is absolutely preferable to turning the ball over. Sure. So I think maybe they're trying to, be too fine, try to make the exact right pass, the perfect pass. And I think, like I've talked about with soccer, and college basketball is way different. But sometimes you have to win ugly. And that's a lot of that is the early season when you really, and in the doldrums of conference, when you have to go to Rose Hill Gym, you have to win ugly in some of these games. And I think a lot, maybe too much finesse because they're, again, in the Chicago State game, I saw a lot more hustle, a lot more, that stuff we talk about when you talk about culture, that hustle, that work ethic, the teamwork, diving on the floor, going for rebounds that maybe you don't really have a chance of getting, but you're taking that extra chance. And I thought so much of the Billikens in this game was soft. And I think I literally said they play like big babies, like every touch. And it of course falls on the stars, the guys who are, having the ball in their hands more than anyone, the Swopes, the Jimersons, the Avilas. And I think it ties in with, Avila would lose the ball and he just kind of, ref, no? Okay.
Yeah.
And you're just like, dude, like, use your ass. You're a big fucker. Like, you're the man here. They're not the man. You're the man.
Yeah, and I think we have to give Jackson State a little bit of credit here too, because I do think they played
Oh
tough.
God.
The way you put it was they kind of played afraid of Shannon Grant.
I
who
thought
was
they did.
one of the
Absolutely.
better players.
I thought
Yeah,
on multiple occasions you had players driving into the paint and second guessing
yeah.
what the hell they were doing. I think on a fast break, Shannon Grant was the last guy back, and it completely stopped the fast break.
Yeah, he had good length. I
Yes.
was, more than I realized. He was, pretty athletic, long guy.
And for a big guy, he was a big guy, like 300 pounds. Just south?
Yeah, 290, I think is what he was listed at. 6'11", 290.
Is that what you put on your draft card so you look a little bit more mobile?
Yeah, I'm not 300. Come on.
Yeah, 295. This
Exactly.
this isn't $4. It's $3.99.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought he was good, but I do agree that this isn't the first time we've kind of seen them seem a little intimidated by somebody who's got real size like that and who moves well, like he did. I gotta say he wears his 290 well. I would never have guessed.
Oh God! I mean, yeah, absolutely. He has no ass.
I mean,
He did not have. I mean, if he develops an ass, he's got more body to work with.
Mm-hmm.
This is getting weird, isn't it?
That'll get him to 300.
Yes.
I do want to talk about.
Yeah, go ahead. No. I was just going to say that with that vision, and kind of talking about Swope digging holes for this team, and Church talked about it in the post game today about how, and we'll talk about it, but basically he doesn't have the ability to pull Swope when he's making these kind of. He's got to figure it out himself because they don't have a guy who can replace him on the bench. But
Right.
I thought Swope especially, when the ball sticks in his hand, he kind of tunnel vision and is only focused on how he's going to score. And I thought on a couple of occasions he missed wide open players, including Jimerson on the 3-point line, and I think that was really frustrating. And we saw more of that at San Francisco and more of that early in the Chicago State game.
So not necessarily that the turnover number here was bad because it was just 2, but maybe the missed opportunity number, the things that a real
shooting,
point guard would see, right?
Yeah.
Which
I mean, again, he's not a point guard.
Yeah, but as a team, 13 turnovers, not a great number, not what you want to see. But Zach, 3 from 12 from the free throw line, not ideal. And then the fact that Jackson State winds up with 11 more field goal attempts in this game, like it just feels like SLU left a lot on the table in this game and kept it kind of artificially close for way too long, and honestly the whole game, because it would, not a big margin of victory either.
Yeah, Jackson State's defense, credit to them. Again, Shirts talked about it in the post game. They were, playing the obvious. They were overplaying the obvious pass.
That's right.
And Shirts talked about how you have to make the exact opposite pass. I don't know if that's necessarily true because of the rotation, that whether or not it's not the direct opposite. I don't know. He's smarter than I am. What am I talking about? I thought the Jackson State game, this defense was an homage to Shaka Smart at VCU, where they were playing foul every time. They can't call everything defense.
Right. Yeah, and it was more of a half court style than the the VCU. They use a lot more of the court on defense, but they played, I think what I called in here was like a frenetic pressure defense, right? Like you say, overplaying every passing lane. They were getting hands on every attempt, forcing turnovers. They completely took SLU out of the game, and you come back to kind of some of that softness, right? Like that just like SLU was very, very, very clearly shaken by what they were doing. They were frustrated by it. They looked surprised by it, quite frankly. And I just thought, look, in the first half, I thought this is brilliant. Like what they're doing is brilliant. There is an 0-7 team. They've got nothing to lose. Might as well just go for it. I don't think they can keep this up for 40 minutes, for 2 full hours. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. But I thought it was a pretty smart way to come out against SLU and take them out of the first half anyway.
For all of the teeth grinding that I've done about the mailed-in performance that I thought SLU put in this first half, the refs in this game mailed in the entire night. I'm not even complaining about SLU. Like like the fouls against Lou. I don't care. Screw that. Like the Billikens they put themselves in this position in this game.
Yeah,
but
the officiating should not have been a factor.
No, and I don't think it necessarily was, but they were awful. It was as low effort as you can possibly get for an officiating crew. By the way, the first one I have here also is funny because it came back in this game today. A rebounding foul called after the ball had already gone over the backboard. That happened again today. I don't understand this. I need somebody to explain. Is somebody out there? If I'm crazy here, please in the comment section. If I'm crazy,
you need a ball that's gone all the way over the backboard.
It's
right?
it just has to hit the top.
So that one thing that I've seen a lot, actually, like my wife and I were just talking about this last night because we were watching Kentucky Gonzaga and it came up. I think even if it hits that kind of like because back like the way I was always taught it is if it hits anywhere on that silver rim around the that stainless steel rim around a backboard, it's out, right? It's over.
It's if as long as it's part of the ball hits anything other than the flat surface.
But I think now, like say this is the top of the backboard, right?
Yeah.
Even if it hits that corner, which is not the flat surface, and comes back toward the court and not toward the stands, I think they're letting it play on. Like they're not calling that out. So it's a fine line, might be a bit of a judgment call, but I think that's
too much of a in my mind. That's
where
too
that
much
rule has gone. Yeah, I mean it's easier to say anything that hits the edge and not the board is out. No. But I think now if it's coming back in play immediately,
and I guess that does kind of make sense as well, as long as it doesn't hit the shot clock and come back into play. So I get it because the basket is it does come out like 6 inches from the baseline. It's not right over the baseline, is it?
Oh, it's at least a foot.
Oh, is it? Okay. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, when was the last time I studied? Like what? The last time I watched Hoosiers?
Dimensions.
The last time I watched Hoosiers and he measured the backboard.
Right.
Okay, so these officials, Robbie was called for a foul when he blocked a shot. I believe you called that one out. A missed goaltend after a shooting foul that would have given Slew a chance for a 3-point play. Yes, I'm being petty here. I already said that Slew. This isn't me being upset about calls against Slew, but that's what would have happened. If they make the free throw, of course, which in this game, this is the funniest thing. I've never seen this. They let the shot clock run. It was 35 seconds or 35.2 seconds left on the game clock. And so they ran the shot clock to 35 seconds or whatever. Is it 35 or 30 now? I think it's 30.
35.
Okay.
Sorry, 30.
30, yeah. So it's 30.4 seconds or something like that. So they let the clock run through the shot clock violation and just ended the game. I was like, really? Okay, I guess it's Monday night and it's Slew Jackson State. They got to get out of here.
But you're like, we saw that there was extra time. Like there was still a shot clock. So
this isn't Vietnam. This isn't Vietnam. There are rules.
There was something on top of that 30 seconds.
Talk about Deshaun Ruffin in this game. Jesus Christ, did this kid come out of nowhere?
Well, and the thing is, Zach, he came out of nowhere because he hasn't played for them yet this season, right? So like I didn't just assume. I saw him on the roster, but I didn't just assume he was going to be back in this game. I didn't go out and read like latest, Jackson State headlines or anything like that. I was just kind of like looking at box scores, looking at their stats, looking at their schedule, like the kind of basics here. So when he shows up in the game, I'm like this is the like former 4-star recruit who showed up at Ole Miss a few years ago, but he hasn't played a game since January of 2023, almost 2 full years.
Jesus. He
was at Ole Miss for 2 seasons, and was a highly talented. He's a small player. He's only like 5'11", 155. He's a smaller player.
Could have fooled the hell out of me.
Yeah, but he was a really solid recruit. So that to me changed the whole dynamic. And like I'm already looking at them going, they're 0-7, but like that's a brutal schedule, and they've had no favors. But if I had known he was going to be back too, I would kind of at least raised a little red flag. Like this guy can really play. If he's back and he's healthy, he's actually a player. He got out to a really hot start, Zach. and then somehow went ice cold the rest of the game. Finished
God
4
bless
of
him.
19.
God
Yeah,
bless him.
thankfully, just one field goal in the second half. I do think part of that is Slew like having to realize like, we actually gotta tighten up on this guy. But at the same time, he did miss some open looks as well. So after that initial adrenaline rush of finally being back on a court, I think his some of the cobwebs caught up with him there. But still, like, he's a guy over the course of the season who's going to be crucial for them.
Like Jimmy Morris and the rookie. Old man coming in. I put this in the notes for the Chicago State game, but I want to say it right now because retention, because listener retention is short. I think we need to get these players to the arena 45 minutes earlier and start just like warming up.
So you just want to completely mess with whatever their game day routine is.
Well, I'm just saying that they seem to show up in the second half. And I'm wondering if we can't knock out that first half by having them, shoot around for 45 extra minutes.
It's a theory. I mean,
because we're going to talk a lot this week about not showing up early in games.
Right, and that was kind of Jimerson in this game, right?
Yeah.
Gibson Jimerson, one big half again. It's kind of been a theme for him this season. This time it was the second half. He was, I would say, a shell of himself in the first half, but ended up finishing with 21 points on 8 of 16 shooting, which is good.
Do you think this is, I don't want to say by design, but do you think this is a product of having so many offensive weapons and a ball that doesn't get stuck in looking for one person? I mean, this feels like, because I don't know. It just feels like he shows up when we really need him, I guess. And I wonder if that's because they start hunting him and working to get him opportunities. I don't know.
I think part of it was just the fact that this team was not able to sustain the defense it was playing in the first half. And Jimerson's one of these guys. He doesn't need a whole lot of time and space, but we've gotten so used to defenses giving him nothing that when he gets a little bit and gets in kind of a rhythm, that's when he takes off. And so I'm not entirely surprised to see, coming off the pressure that they were playing in the first half, to finally get some looks, get a little space in the second half, knock a few down, and then things start going his way. He's been a little more streaky this season, and very much a I don't know if rhythm or momentum or just like kind of getting hot and cold is the thing, but like, it's rare this season that we've seen him string two halves together. And I think a little bit of that is him and a little bit of that is just the defense.
Two more players, obviously. The other two focal points of this offense, Isaiah Swope and Robbie Avila, they settled into a groove in the second half as well. I think the whole team kind of pulled their shit together at once.
Yeah, for sure. And Avila finished with 15, 8, and 7, which are exactly the kind of numbers that, like, coming into the season, if you were like, he's going to finish a game with that's exactly what we want to see out of him, right? Some nice assists in particular. He had hit some backdoor cutters really nicely. But he also turned it over 5 times, Zach. And I think a lot of that was them just kind of getting to him in the first half. But this is kind of becoming a thing this year. We've seen some pretty high turnover numbers out of Robbie, and I'm not necessarily like super worried about it. I know he's been hurt a lot, but he does cough it up a little bit more than I was prepared.
And a lot easier, I think, than I realized.
Yeah,
I think that I don't know if it's nonchalant or that YMCA game he has, right, but it really feels like there are times where he has the vision to find his teammates, but not necessarily the vision to see pressure coming.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think there could be some of that, and people just maybe taking a little bit of advantage of him, like kind of not being full speed. Not that his full speed is very high speed, but just I think knowing that he's a little bit injured and playing a little more conservatively, they're just putting a little extra pressure on him and forcing him to cough it up. And once you do that once, I think you get a little bit of confidence and try and do that again and again. Swope, we already went over, had 18, 5, and 7, somehow only 2 turnovers. But Zach,
I was just saying that I thought instead of the turnovers, I think it was the missed shots, the ill-advised shots, which I think on some level you could if you wanted to create a stat, you know how like they say that 2-pointers outside the paint are no go. Like I think you could say like bad shots are turnovers. So like Swope's today where he missed the rim is a turnover in my mind. Yeah, that's a straight turnover.
But this was, like Avila and Jimerson in the second half, it kind of started to come together for him as well. So we did see Kellen Thames in this game dealing with his cramping issues again. He was limited to 15 minutes in pretty short stretches, and we did see him grimacing at times too.
Is someone poisoning our elite athletic basketball players? That causing them to have these it is bizarre. It is really bizarre that we're having a similar issue couple seasons.
The thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's, until we can rule that out, Zach.
Are the Monstars stealing our players' muscle?
There's no bad theories in a brainstorm, right? I mean, and I guess anything's possible until they can prove otherwise. But he's such a burst of energy when he is in the game and when he is available.
Yes,
he was plus 9 in his 15 minutes. Only 2 other players had better numbers. That was Jimerson and Avila, and each of them played 38 minutes. So to be plus 9 in 15 minutes, I just thought was really impressive. And whatever's ailing him, we need to figure it out quickly.
Yeah, I want to talk about Kellen Thames' defense in this one, and we're going to get to it eventually. I got it in another part of this conversation. Kalu Anya's rebounding. He's coming along, I think, in rebounding. I think positionally, I don't think he's great, but I think the effort is there for him.
For sure. And he had another really crucial offensive rebound in the closing minutes, just like we saw the week prior. He finished with 11 rebounds overall, which is kind of in line with his average. But that's such an important piece, Zach, because I don't think we're a super strong rebounding team outside of him, right? I think that's...
Not until we let Max Picard off his leash. We're getting to the Pikaarpaganda. Get ready for it, baby. It's coming.
Yeah. Amari McCautry scared us a little bit in this game. He seemed limited in the second half and had his leg in that same contraption.
I mean, who did that scare? Because I was not to toot my own horn.
Well, I think, Stu didn't know what it was and tweeted out about it. And then, watching it from TV and maybe not recognizing that it was the same thing that Larry Hughes was wearing, which is called what, by the way?
I would say it's probably a Hyper Ice, like a Hyper Ice brand thing, like Normatec or Normatec. But it's probably, it probably has hot and cold settings. So you'd put it around an affected area, and then it would either heat it up or cool it down. And I think he probably had it on the heat setting, keep it warm while he's on the bench.
Gotcha. Well, Stu tweeted after the game, after you clarified what that was, that he is fine, no injury, that his playing time was just a coach's decision. Now, Zach, we already talked about Jackson State's defense and how I didn't think it was necessarily sustainable. They did finally start to rack up some foul trouble on top of, fatigue and things like that.
This is absolutely a Hyper Ice. This is a Hyper Ice Venom, too. Advanced heat and vibration wrap. Absolutely, 100%. The logo is exactly the same.
Okay, I totally, as an athlete, I know what that is. So, Anyway, Schertz talked about Jackson State's defense in the postgame, which I liked. He said they were essentially selling out, jumping the passing lanes of the first option. I think he admired their game plan. I think he thought they were pretty smart to do this.
Yeah, I think it's about making a bunch of guys who are just learning to read and react off each other really read and react off each other. It's putting pressure on the decision making of guys who are still trying to figure out what the right decision is.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. And then once SLU slowed down, they're able to make what you said before, the opposite of that first option pass, right?
Yeah, they didn't necessarily slow down the action, the physical action, but it felt like they were kind of figuring out that moving a little bit would relieve that pressure, and being aware that you are the opposite receiver. So you need to get even more open, or you have an opportunity to get towards the hoop or get towards the 3-point line to be open for a shot.
That's right. And then once you get into that rhythm and figure out what they're doing defensively, SLU only ends up with 2 turnovers in the second half after those 13 in the first half. I should clarify, I said before that was for the game. That was for the first half. But they only forced 9 out of Jackson State for the game, which was a little worrisome to me. I don't know. Did it bother you as much as well?
What was that one? I was sorry. I was looking for the next transition.
Turnovers.
I get turnovers. I will crucify people for turnovers. I am sorry. It just, especially like it feels like when it feels like they're not earned by the other team, right? I can understand a guy jumping a passing lane. I can understand a guy ripping you, getting up in your business and swiping up and knocking the ball away. I can get that, but like lazy passing where the guy's already halfway in the lane, or you get bumped, or a guy just throws his hand in while doubles down on you got to move the ball. You got to be aware that something like that could be coming. And I don't know. I just really didn't like how easily the turnovers were given. Does that make sense? So yeah. A lot of this episode, I'm going to, I haven't heard the phrase, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And it's certainly about winning and losing, but with a team that's coming together and a program that's trying to reinvent itself and bring fans back, I think how they play the game is so important, because that's what signals the improvement and the positive vibes going forward and brings fans in. So they definitely need to win, but when you're playing a game like San Francisco, it's how you play that game. How you go into a hostile environment, and I don't think that was hostile at all. It was quite tame, but it's you got to show me something outside of the wins and losses, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. But then in terms of forcing turnovers, it seems you were a little bit frustrated by just the fact that we just have never seemed willing to kind of play that much pressure.
Yeah, I first of all, you can't talk about forcing turnovers in this game without talking about what I kind of teased earlier. That is the Kellen Thames steal at the end of the half, which, by the way, he's got to finish that. Or he did finish. He's got to make that free throw. But amazing finish by him. But I think it's just, I watch teams play physical defense. And I mean, if we're not in a zone, I'd like to see a physical man-to-man. At least, it adds to the frustration of where the players are turning the ball over. It compounds that because that looks lazy. And then the defense doesn't exactly really try to, it's not up in your face. So that kind of looks a little saggy. So it's just, it adds up. And I think that's where the frustration built in me with this team in this game.
Yeah, for sure. The rebounding margin grew over the course of the game, which is good. Second half free throws were still bad, 5 for 10, not as historically bad in the first half. Do you have any explanation whatsoever for free throw shooting in this game, especially
big hands? Remember my big hands? Remember my big hands?
We've talked about this before.
Yeah. Should I bring that theory back?
So our whole team has hands that are bigger than other teams' hands. I don't know.
Okay. So my theory is that free throw shooting is as much about technique as it is conditioning.
Yeah.
This is my harebrained theory, because you play a game, you're doing intervals essentially up and down the court. You go to make a play where your heart rate is the most elevated of that time, and you get knocked on your ass. Your heart rate even elevates higher. You're going to the line. It's about settling down and making the free throw. And I think with that Jackson State pressure defense, especially in that first half, because again, you could say the second half free throws were 5 of 10, so we got better, or maybe the right shooter got to the line, or the Jackson State defense fell off a little bit. They were less demanding on our players to get to the rim, to the point of the foul. So, I mean, I think I think it's about settling it down. And I think that Jackson State defense carried over to those free throws where the players were elevated a little bit. They had, they couldn't settle down. They were a little kicked in the teeth.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot more sense than big hands.
Oh, absolutely. But but big hands is funny. It's a fun idea that people with big hands just can't shoot free throws. Look at Dwight Howard.
Yeah. It's true.
Have you ever tried to shoot a mini basketball into a hoop? It's impossible.
It's very hard. Yeah. Have you tried to dribble it?
Oh, it's impossible. Oh, yes. I played tennis in high school, sir. Remember that.
So the sloppy play from SLU, it all added up to 14 extra field goal attempts for Jackson State, 67-53. It doesn't matter if you're playing a winless 300-plus rated opponent at home. You can't give your opponent that many more chances. Points off turnovers were 20-9 in JSU's favor. They also won second chance points despite having fewer offensive rebounds. It's just it's that kind of stuff, Zach, that drives you crazy, because the funny thing here is SLU was actually pretty good from the field, 52.8% overall, 40% from three, but there were just too few attempts. And then the free throw shooting was abysmal, 36.4% for the game. So they couldn't even afford to be off, just given the fact that they had that many fewer attempts. It's the effort stuff, right? Both Schertz and Jimerson said there weren't enough halftime adjustments there weren't any. Yeah, there weren't any.
And that's going to be I'll let you finish, but that will bled into today's game. Same thing.
Yes. Yeah. So they said it was just a matter of effort and decision making, right? It's nothing that scheme wise they were doing wrong. Schertz also said they were taking crazy shots in the first half.
I couldn't believe that Kalu Anya shot didn't drop. Went around the toilet bowl and out.
Right. He was definitely frustrated with shot selection. He gave JSU a lot of credit for their game plan, especially defensively. Said they probably deserved the win. He said their physicality bothered us. They were aggressive, deflecting passes. That was the most aggressive team. We were hell-bent in the first half on playing off ball screens. They had us unquestionably. Maybe flustered would be an understatement. So deservedly, he gave them a lot of credit. And Zach, this game was a lot more of a scare than it needed to be. But credit to Jackson State. I think they're going to be better in their conference than their record right now indicates.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. Going back to the free throw thing and kind of the unable to settle your heart rate, relax. Is that the theory behind the kind of when they set up the free throws and then people run, what do they run, 5 laps and then go back to free throws? Is that kind of the idea there?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like in practice, you want to take those free throws between drills, like when your heart rate is high, when you've just been all out sprinting, then take free throws. You don't do it right as you're starting practice or at the end of practice after you had a pep talk and all that. And yes, you want to be shooting free throws then too. You want to be shooting as many as possible. Yeah. And the best free throw shooters shoot hundreds a day. In
my mind, you'd want to take you would want to really put some weight on your legs going into shooting just jumpers later in the game. You know what I mean? Yeah. You want to be able to have those jelly legs, because who knows if you're going to have that during, down crunch time or you're ready for any scenario.
Yeah, it's a precision art form, and it's about repetition and getting all of those things. You're breathing. If you watch free throw shooters, you'll see a great big deep breath, and then they'll do whatever their little thing is with the ball that they do. Whether it's going behind their back once or dribbling it twice or whatever they do. I know Majerus had a quote about the best free throw shooters and how he watches their technique and what they do as soon as they get the ball from the ref. But if you watch it, because they give you that camera shot during a game directly at the free throw shooter, most of them will take a great big breath too to try and slow that heart rate down. But yeah, in practice, you got to shoot your free throws throughout practice, in the middle of practice, and not just at the end or the beginning.
I think we should. This is like an ice cream sandwich with worms in the middle instead of ice cream. Because we got to talk about this 78-61 loss at San Francisco on Thursday the 5th. This was a late night for me, Pete. I think we all are aware. I am.
You're on Central Time. It was even later for me, man.
I still say that. What was it? Being out in the Eastern time zone is the most fun during the NCAA tournament because you're out until like 1 or 2 a.m. after your game, and there's games on the West Coast still playing.
That's true.
And you can you don't have to like go out. You can just go out and keep drinking and watching sports, and you don't.
And the games also don't start at like 8:30 in the morning.
That's true.
Or whatever it is.
On the West Coast. Oh, it's crazy.
So you can work a half day and then disappear at lunch and never come back or whatever. So yeah, Zach. I mean, but this loss to San Francisco, another game, another pregame injury surprise. This time, Larry Hughes suffered an injury in practice on Wednesday, and Tom Timmerman and Stu Durando tweeted out the news that he wouldn't be playing. But we only found out about a half hour before tip-off. So
conspiracy.
Just as I am like setting up, getting ready to watch this game, and I think this one, yes, this was the same night Xavier had a game at 8, and then this SLU game was at 10 my time because Xavier was playing at TCU. So I come down, my kids are asleep. I'm like getting all ready to go, and my wife's game is kind of running a little long. And I'm just seeing like, Larry Hughes is out. I don't know that it actually mattered in this game, Zach, because this was a disaster along the lines of that Wichita State game a couple weeks ago. I just, I wasn't quite prepared for this, right? Like I was nervous. I saw that the spread was 8.5, 9.5, something like that. So SLU was not expected to win this game necessarily, but I didn't think it was going to quite be like this. But before we get into all of that, we should acknowledge that Gibson Jimerson became SLU's all-time leading scorer during this game, passing Anthony Bonner's career mark of 1,972 points. Jimerson is now 23, was after this game, 23 points away from 2,000 for his career, which would give him a nice mark, something above 2,000 to be the all-time leader now. So he has
fitting that it went in on a goaltend.
Yeah, what an unceremonious way.
Not even a 3, not a 3.
I know.
Which I mean, I think in some way, I think that's actually fitting because I think Jimerson has really done an amazing job at turning into much more than a one-dimensional player on the offensive end, especially. I mean, he is incredible at the way he protects the ball going to hoop. I know it's been rougher in the last few games, and it was much cleaner against different the easier teams in the schedule. But like,
sure,
I think even going through last year, the entire year, he was just so good. Once he got a step on a guy, he was able to shield him off and just kind of, get out there and lay it in.
Yeah, for sure. He had 16 in this game. I wouldn't say this was one of his better games overall. 6 of 13, 2 of 8 from 3. He got burned a decent amount on the defensive end. But this might be the first time this season that we can't point to any one player and say that they had a good game. I think if you're looking at the box score and trying your best, maybe you look at Avila, who had 13, 4, and 5, but it was another 5 turnover game for him. He clearly isn't 100%. And as our friend Jack Godard pointed out on Twitter during the game, no one except Swope really understands how to cut when he has the ball. Maybe Jimerson a little bit. Every once in a while, somebody else like Thames will do it. But these guys just clearly haven't practiced enough with him yet. Like it's the offense is supposed to run through him, and we're just not seeing nearly enough action to the basket.
Yeah, no, and we did see a lot more of that in the. Again, we talk about we're behind. We're not really relevant except when we finish or head into the Chicago State game. But it's a story. It's recapping a story, and I think Avila just he doesn't have the ball nearly enough in his hand, and of course he is coming off injury. But I think when the ball sticks in anybody else's hand but him, really nothing happens. I think the only person I'm super comfortable with having the ball for more than maybe 5 seconds at a time, 5 to 10 seconds at a time is Robbie Avila. And I'm still a little not sure about it because, he'll kind of do that YMCA, hold the ball back, try to back like he'll back one person down, it won't work. He'll carry it around to the other side, back another guy down, do a spin move, and you're just like, dude, give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up. There's an opening guy, and then he just old man YMCA's it into the hoop.
Right. I know. Almost quite a few of his baskets in these past 3 games have come in that style. You're like, how long are you going to have this ball? What are you doing here?
One of my favorite documentaries, sports documentaries, is Miracle 3, about Georgia's SEC tournament run when they won like 4 games in 3 days after the tornado hit the Georgia Dome. And the coach, one of the assistant coaches, talks about the freshman point guard that had to come in and finish a game and made a buzzer beat. He goes, what are you doing? Oh, great shot. Like, that's how I feel every time Avila keeps the ball in his hand for like 10 seconds.
Right. I actually, and every time he does score on one of those, I'm kind of like, why don't you just do that all day? Because it seems like you're just gonna you're gonna either make the defender foul you or make a mistake. Like
when he's not turning it over. When he's not turning it over.
Because it takes so long. Yeah, you're right.
And also, if you stay there long enough, they're eventually gonna double team you. If anything, they're either gonna foul you, double team you, or you're gonna make the basket.
Right.
So
yeah,
just give it to him and let him hang on to it for a while. Be dangerous, dude. That is what Avila needs to be. Just dangerous.
Right. Yeah. No kidding.
And everything else opens up.
At the risk of setting you on like a 30-minute tirade, I am willing to say here, Swope had a bad game. He fouled out with 8 points in 31 minutes. He took bad shots. He didn't hit a 3. He had 4 assists, but really did little else in this game, Zach. It was maybe his worst game.
I tweeted out, it'll be interesting to see. So I watched. So he went out. 5 minutes passed, and I thought the Billikens looked the best they had looked all game on offense, with as far as moving the ball and players moving off the ball. And I said it's going to be interesting to kind of see the fallout from what that fallout would be in the locker room between Shirts and Swope and the team, because of how well Slew played when Swope was not in the game. So I was very interested to see if maybe that got through to Swope.
Yeah.
Showing him that, hey, man, we need you to make, like I said, winning plays, not baskets. We don't need you to make the play. We just make you to make winning plays. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Not enough winning plays, I think, is
and not have the ball in your hand. You don't have to be
right.
You're not Tremaine Isabel, man.
Yeah.
You're just kind of not. Although I think it's a great comparison. I will say I made that comparison, but yeah, it's a really good one.
Isabel, by the way, tonight tweeted like LOL. It doesn't matter who Slew has; they play the same every year, or something like that.
Wait, what?
They
play the same.
He said it doesn't matter. Yeah, go look at his tweet.
Why is he going full heel on us?
I don't know, man. He's been very positive, and then
what the hell?
I know.
I mean, so like what? Kansas they beat Kansas, and he's now on that. What this guy jumped ship? Like, what is happening here?
Bro,
was he out drinking then? Like, that's my question.
I don't know.
Like what? Like, it's like the Cusimano stuff. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Like, keep it out of your I get that. Like, I'm negative. I'm extremely negative on Twitter, but like, I stand by. Like, I'm still here to talk about it when things go right. Like, I'm not here just to come out and throw a stray across the bow. Like with Cusimano today. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, Mizzou just was number one, and Mizzou just beat number one, and you're out here throwing strays at Slew because you can't get you can't get the inside scoop now.
I think he's still salty that we didn't hire Blake Ahern.
Oh God. Yeah, I mean, that's fair, I guess. I don't, but it's just dumb. Like, I don't know why I don't know how, if you watched that game and said we play the same as with Travis Ford. First of all, you didn't know Slew before Travis Ford, right? So like, what are you talking about here?
Yeah.
Like, what does that even mean? Who did you watch it when Majerus was here? Did you watch it when Spoonhour was here? I don't think you were born yet, dude. Like, give me a break. Like, I just don't. I don't understand his premise, and it's flawed from the beginning.
Yeah.
By the way, if somebody yelled MIZ at the SLU game today, you're in fully within your right to yell at them.
Yeah, it seemed like that happened, and you were not.
No, I think it's ridiculous, dude. Like, and that's on SLU too. Like, I think it's on SLU as my like. Again, I tweeted out before the game, like, you have to. You got to take that as a shot across the bow. You got to take that as somebody infringing on your territory. Right. You have to look that dead in the eye and say, we have to be better than that. We have to grab these headlines. They cannot have these headlines. We have to grab them first, and not kind of celebrate other schools' accomplishments. I saw a little bit of that on the volleyball side. We don't get NCAA credits for volleyball. Get wins, like that doesn't help. That doesn't help SLU. That doesn't help SLU. Mizzou doesn't help SLU. So why are we giving them? And of course, it's not on the main channels. It's not on SLU official stuff. I get that, but just not a fun look. But yeah, let's get back to like things that are actually happening on the court. I think
so. Thames started. He only played the first couple minutes of this game, of the second half before being shut down for the night. So he had 6 and 5 in 15 minutes. So yeah, I guess they were playing it safe with him. SLU ended up going just 4 for 24 from 3 and 5 of 9 from the free throw line. So free throws remained a major concern after this.
I like how you added ED to that one. It's funny. It's a story.
17 turnovers. It's way, 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 way too high. Look, SLU and San Francisco had essentially the same amount of attempts from 3, and the free throw line and the inside the perimeter, but San Francisco just shot better, Zach. 51% overall, 46% from 3, which is bad news for us, 64% from the line, and then SLU was 45% overall, 17% from 3, 56% from the line. That's really not much to be confused about. We shot the same number of 3-pointers. They just hit 7 more of them, right? Like that's a big part of the gap right there, and we just didn't do enough else to make up that gap. We didn't protect the ball, didn't win the rebounding battle, didn't force turnovers, didn't play disciplined enough defense. Those are all the things that you have to take care of if you're not shooting well.
And now I know why they use decimals when they talk about slash lines instead of percentages, because there's a lot of dashes in here that are confusing the hell out of me.
I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, no, I mean, that confuses me, but I don't think there's a lot to be confused about in this game.
No, I don't. And you know what kills me, Zach, is that SLU went on that 9-point run to end what was otherwise a very poor first half. So they went into the locker room only down 4. And then I was like on a text message chain with a few other friends. I had typed out something along the lines of, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond and come out in the second half. Because if SLU can play solid defense, I don't think San Francisco has much offensively. Start making shots, and this could go our way. And I couldn't quite word that in a way to make it sound interesting, but like my point was, I just wanted to see how they came out of the locker rooms in the second half, right? Because I thought whoever looks good in the beginning of the second half is probably going to win this game. And the way things had trended at the end of the first half, we had a very reasonable argument to think that SLU would do it. So of course, the second half started as badly as possible. And I think USF started on a 26-6 run or something like that to start the half. So
you know how demoralizing that is? Because it's what? It's 11:15 there at that point, 11:15 p.m.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so after about 10 p.m., that's that might as well have been a 46-6 run. It felt that bad.
The lead goes from 4 to 24 in minutes, 4 to 24, and the whole game blows open. And the thing, you talk about the time, Zach, and I got to say, like, in addition to the fact that this game happened so late, this was a really, really, really busy week for me, like between work and kids and everything else going on, extremely busy. And the conversation about like how we should feel about this game and where SLU is this season was exhausting to me.
Yes.
And I had no energy for it whatsoever.
I had a lot of energy for it.
I know you did. I know you did. And I didn't want to seem rude in my text messages, but I was just like,
shut up, dude.
I can't.
Just let it go.
Right,
just let it go, man. We'll talk about it at the end of the week. Just relax.
It was not just you. It was Discord. It was Billikens.com. It was Twitter. It was everywhere. I was just like, I don't have the energy for this.
It was exhausting.
It was exhausting. And in this game, I think it would have been all right had we lost a relatively close game and kind of had played well.
Again, with this team right now, and I think in the first, I think what you're going to talk about goals in a minute, but I think in the first, quarter or eighth of the season, you want to see how do you play the game. You can accept a road loss because road games are difficult.
Yeah.
Going to the West Coast is difficult. Going from the West Coast to the East Coast is difficult. And I think you can understand dropping a game. But I don't think I understood a 26-6 run where it just looked like you came out of half, I don't know, thinking I don't know.
Right. And the crazy thing is here, we got it to within 13, I want to say, within 6 or 7 minutes left to play.
Just when I think I'm out. They pull me back in.
I'm at the point where I'm like, do I just go to bed right now? Do I just give up on this? I'm so tired of it. And you start doing the math. You're like, okay, we're on a run. We're down 13. We've got over 6 minutes to play. I'm like, I've seen crazier things happen.
It's that gif of that girl who's like,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. That's exactly right. It's at least possible. But then, of course, San Francisco hits a couple more shots. They put it away. I do want to point out Malik Thomas for San Francisco, 22 points. He's very good. Yeah. Carlton Lingard was a guy I wasn't too afraid of coming into this game. I knew who he was. I'd seen him before. I knew he was big. He hit 1-3 early and didn't really do anything else in the first half. He averages 6. And he wound up with 15. He was pretty good in this game. And then he had a couple big shots during the stretch where they were really putting us away. Marcus Williams had a good game for them with 15 points. I thought they were a pretty nice team overall, but for a while in that first half, I just thought they're just not much of an offensive team. I knew defense was their identity. And anyway, I thought we had a better shot than this against them. The plus minus numbers, Zach, are crazy here. Anya was the worst, -31 in 32 minutes played, which is not ideal.
That is both appalling and impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen many like that before. Swope was next at -22. The other starters were mostly in the teens on the negative end. McCautry was actually the best for SLU at +8. And then Johnson and Brokoff were the other positive players, +1, +2, but pretty limited minutes for them. I don't know. Look, I didn't have a whole lot to add after this one. It was disheartening. I wanted to see a solid effort. Yeah. I didn't require a win here. I know we're not an at-large team. I wanted to see a good effort. I wanted to see a good game. And it felt a lot more like that Wichita State game, which was just a complete gut punch.
I'm trying to remember what I tweeted. What I tweeted my expectations were ahead of that game. I think it was 40 minutes of focus, tough defense. I don't know. I think 40 minutes of focus is really where I was like, this is bare minimum.
Yeah.
So, and they did not do that.
Yeah. We haven't really seen a good 40-minute effort yet, I would say.
No, not yet. Let's move on to today. 85-62 win, and I got to tell you, Pete, I'm not happy with how this team has played up until this point, but this brought some good vibes. There's some good vibes to be taken from this. There's a lot to like. Again, like I said on the outset of this podcast, because I did say at the beginning of the week that all 3 games were a must-win. I may have exaggerated. When has that ever happened? I've never done that before. But I think the episode of this podcast is probably going to be titled, "It's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game," in some form of that. Because this, again, it's not about the 26 23-point win. It's about what that second half represented.
Yeah, I think so. And it wasn't even the whole second half, right? Because
Right.
it's the way that second half started didn't exactly have me feeling great. But yeah, I think you're right here. I do want to circle back to the lead up to this game. We found out Larry Hughes was out of the lineup again.
His damn tailbone.
Yeah, right. Johnson was back. Thames started.
Johnson was back.
Limited.
Yeah, he was emergency. He did not end up playing. He was available, but emergency.
Available, yeah.
Which I'm going to mention that I thought he should have come in because there was an emergency in the middle of this game.
I think there was.
Yeah.
Thames started, and so did Avila, who still isn't 100%. AJ Casey, still out. Apparently, he's going to get an MRI soon.
Can you just not run into like Mercy? Or like open MRI and get one. I mean, like I went in and got mine in May on my knees, and like it was a ghost town in there. Why didn't we get this one?
I don't know why he didn't get one right away because.
I mean, this sounds like what I did. Like I was like, I'm all right. I'm young. I'll get over it. And then 3 months later, I've got two fully sprained ACLs.
Yeah, right.
Like.
Yeah, so in his case, it's his ankle, it's pain management. He says he's not there. I think he's taking longer than they expected. So so they've gone from, okay, fine, rest your ankle for a little bit to, is there something worse than we thought here? So yeah, I that's my only explanation as to why he didn't get that right away.
Budget restrictions, man.
Exactly.
The budgets and the lights, Pete.
Yeah, we're gonna skimp on their own health care.
Oh God, we can't pay the copay.
SLU just could not shake this team, Zach. The lead was mostly like a 2-possession game until Swope penetrated and passed to a wide open Anya, whose 3-pointer sent SLU into halftime with a 41-33 lead. And I gotta say, maybe I'm stupid for this, but after hitting that shot, going up 8, I kind of thought, okay, like, we're going to come out in the second half. This will be fine. And then, of course, Chicago State narrowed the gap early in the second half. They almost took the lead. I think they got to within 1 or 2.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the final possession. So I kind of was questioning Shirts there at the end of that play at half because ahead of that defensive possession, he took Picard out of the game and brought in Kalu Anya. It was Picard and Avila, but the way Picard had played on defense, I really thought that it was strange that he didn't leave Picard in there and bring Anya in for Avila and run that defensive lineup, especially when the last play of the half, that offensive possession with Swope, didn't really use much of Avila. I think he was involved on kind of the screen action, but I thought that Picard might have served us better on defense, which I think it ended up in a foul and 2 free throws, which both were sunk. But I don't know. I don't know if you thought that was a little weird, but that's where I saw.
No, I think that's a good point. I'm not sure, through my bleary
I'd love to ask what the thought process is there, but
yeah, I was pretty bleary-eyed by this point, but no, I think that's a good point, and I think you're all aboard the Picard train after this one. I think it's one of those things like I don't know. I didn't think about it that much, right? Yeah. Like I'm always excited to see Picard in limited minutes, but I haven't gotten hung up on like him being the answer.
No, I don't think he's necessarily the answer. I think he's another look that we can give teams. And I trust me, I've got notes, and we're going to talk about that. Sure. So I think I want to let us get through this game before I go on and get up on my soapbox.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Then.
But I think he brings a lot. I think he brings a completely different. I think he brings a different look, and he makes teams think a little bit more on offense when he's
Yeah,
when he's out
I
there.
think so. And just the fact that he's a freshman and there's not going to be much on synergy, of him so far. He's going to be hard to scout because we haven't used him a lot. And he's
Correct.
such a unique player. I
Yep.
think there's a lot of things that he can do that kind of can be disruptive.
Yep.
So we talked about Chicago State narrowing the gap early in the half. We get our act together. Jimerson hits a few threes. We get some stops, string it together, put the lead into double digits, and really never look back. Grew it from there, and the rest of the second half I think was great. The entire starting five scored in double figures, led by Avila with 19, Jimerson with 18. Thames, I think, was one of the real highlights of this game. Zach played 23
Absolutely.
minutes, including a good amount in the second half, which feels like a great sign after him being shut down early in the previous two games. So fingers crossed that they are starting to get a handle on whatever this thing is. And the early word out of team camp is that he is getting a dose of these two men in a garden pickles,
Yes.
as I understand it. So,
Yes. I
think
want. Well,
that
I did
literally
notice.
is happening.
I did notice. Well, not 2 Men in a Garden specific, but I did notice when he did come out in the first half. I believe one of the trainers went over and got in his ear, and he just kind of shook his head no. So I think again, I don't want to speculate, but with the amount of minutes he played in this game, I mean, I think it's fair to say that he probably was saying, "No, no. Are you feeling anything?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"No."
Right.
So
Yeah. So I think it's a positive sign.
he brings so much energy to this team, and I just wish he would have finished that dunk
Yeah.
that got blocked.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah, that was a good effort, and I think a better advised dunk than the one he tried at San
Oh
Francisco.
God,
And
we didn't even
complete-
mention that.
I know,
I think
we
this
did not-
this team needs to finishing with a dunk. This team is very bad at dunking. I don't know. I don't think they're necessarily
I've seen
bad
worse
at
at
dunking.
SLU, man.
Oh
I've seen
God,
worse at SLU.
dude, we had Adam Nolmeyer.
We had teams that dunked maybe
That
five
never-
times in a season.
One
Yeah.
time in a season. It was a special night when
Yeah.
people dunked.
Yeah, no kidding.
It was only
Gosh.
against Chicago State. It
Right,
was against Kennesaw State.
The fact that I can think of multiple dunks in this game makes me want to forget those years forever. But anyway, I think it was all positive development on that side. I do want to talk about Isaiah Swope a little bit, Zach. It seems like you have some pretty strong. Before we get into your propaganda or whatever you're calling it.
Look, I don't want to dunk on Swope. I do.
You could. I mean, he's not very tall.
Oh my God! I'm the chucklehead. You're the straight man. Get it right.
All right. Sorry.
No, I think I just don't. I don't trust him right now. I said that in the beginning of the season, and he went out for some 30 pieces, but he's also shown me just inexplicable nonsense, as I tweeted out. Like he's either electrifying or he's actively hurting the team, and that's frustrating. Like
I think
it's harsh.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a little more harsh, and I think I'm still kind of hung up on the fact that he's playing out of position.
Yeah.
And
Oh yes.
he's prepared to play in a different offense than what we're forcing him to play in.
Yeah.
Right. Like with the ball spending a lot more time in his hand as the lead guard. It's just not what anybody wants, I don't think.
Yeah.
So that's what's frustrating here, and the fact that we didn't have Kobe Johnson available, in addition to not having Dotzler for the rest of the year. So he's shouldering a kind of undue burden.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that he's transferred schools and learning some new things in that regard.
I think you have to be when you're a senior or a super senior, like you have to show a certain poise and ability to, again, regulate your streaks of poor basketball. And Schertz talked about that on the post game. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, is that he hasn't been really able to regulate those poor stretches of basketball. He kind of just it's like that quicksand speech in The Replacements. You make a bad play, and then you make another bad play, and then another bad play. And And Church talked about how at Indiana State he was able to pull him really fast if he would make a bad play or make an ill-advised shot. And he said here it's kind of an issue with the injuries. He's got to figure it out. Swope's got to figure out how to regulate that and how to take ownership of the issue and pull himself out of that quicksand. And I think he talked about Kobe being available only in emergency, and I got to tell you, after that 3 straight possessions, and we're going to talk about it right now, I guess. From Isaiah Swope, I would have thrown Kobe Johnson out there immediately. That was an emergency to me because, I mean, it's those streaks of those ill-advised plays have been prominent. Those poor decision making has been prominent in the losses, I think. You look at San Francisco, it was a couple straight possessions where he kind of tried to take over and missed a lot. In that Wichita State game early, he really shot us out of that, among other players. But that was kind of he was the focal point in that one because he had the ball in his hand. But these coaches talk about getting a kill on defense where you get 3 straight possessions without a basket against. Yeah. And, I mean, a point in this game where he put together a kill by himself against himself. He missed a 3-pointer with 5:10 to play, and I think that was that a 30-footer?
Yeah, it was a long one.
It was a long one.
Maybe not 30, but,
Yeah. And then a turnover at 4:26, and then a missed 3-pointer at 4:04. And I don't think that was that one of them that he put off the backboard? Was that the one that just went off the backboard, that final one?
That I don't remember.
It might have been. Don't quote me on that. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but it was still a missed 3-pointer. And prior to that sequence, the Billikens were threatening to pull the lead out to 10. It was 27-18. And after that sequence, Chicago State's back in the game and threatening to tie it up. And I mean, that's one of those where if that's against a decent team, we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that was one of the things I noticed about this game is just how many opportunities we gave Chicago State to tie it or take the lead. And we did let them back in a lot in the first half. And then in the very early stretch of the second half, the first, 4-minute media timeout segment. You're right. Against a better team, that's going to be a real problem because it came down to missed shots for Chicago State. The only reason why they weren't taking leads in those stretches, and we've seen earlier in the season, earlier in the week, SLU when they kind of give up, they break off the ability to kind of go on a run. They are letting if they let a team take a sudden lead on them like that, it seems like there's kind of a snowball effect. Like there's something mentally that's happened. Yeah. We got lucky here. Chicago State didn't knock down those shots. When they
Thames got that offensive rebound.
That one happened too, but there were at least like 3 or 4 times where Chicago State missed shots that would have either tied or given them the lead in the first half. So. We were lucky that this wasn't a better team, and you can't afford, like you say, the self-inflicted kill if you're playing a better team than honestly. We're on YouTube, so I'm just going to go with you can't unalive yourself. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just can't, Zach. But Schertz did praise his ability in the post game to pull himself out of it.
Yes,
in this one, he's
By the way, I just after going in on Swope for an hour now, hour and 45 minutes. Or hour and 50 minutes. I just want to say I wrote this next part. I just want like what you're reading. I wrote that just so I want people to acknowledge that I'm not totally just trashing the guy.
And he wasn't kidding because Swope made multiple winning plays that won't show up in the box score. Plays on rebounds where he kept the ball alive for SLU, like kind of extending the possession, giving us second chances, and
those are things we haven't seen. I don't remember any time where SLU has tried to go in and try to salvage a rebound by tipping it out. And I am the biggest hater of the tip out. I think it's the worst thing to happen to basketball, but it's something you got to have in your arsenal. Actually, it's not the worst thing to happen to basketball, but it's annoying. But yeah, I think you got to do it now. And I think it was great plays. There was him and Avila. I've been highly critical of both of them because they are 2 of the focal points of this team. And
yes.
Avila had one where it wasn't a it wasn't a rebound. It was a loose ball, which I thought was a brilliant, quick thinking. Is the loose ball. He realized he wasn't going to be able to corral it. He knew it was going to a Chicago State player. So he tipped it out to the 3-point line where I think it was Kaluanya waiting for the ball. And that recycled the offense. And that was huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's change subjects here and get to somebody who you are all aboard.
I am the Max Pikaarpaganda. Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, Picard enters at 12:45 remaining in the first half. Immediately records a steal. Immediately gets his hands in passing lanes. Uses that length to grab. I mean, it was a short guy too. Like, that's difficult. That's a tough play. Getting your hands in on a shorter guard when you're 6'11". Like, that's hard. But I think Picard, physically ready or not, I think he should be getting these same minutes game in and game out. Will he struggle against beefier players on defense? I think there's some of that, but like, I also think his length and his quickness more than make up for his inability to kind of have a guy back down on him. I think he's able to kind of give that guy a little space, you know, maybe not take the brunt of the physicality and kind of reach over and get that block or alter the shot. So again, him against Grant for Jackson State, yeah, I'd be worried. But I also think that he's a bit bigger and more mobile than a guy like Grant. I think his mobility is insane. He's, the length, the quick. I talked about the quickness. I think he's insanely athletic too. He's a beanpole, but the dude can make plays. Like, he's a guard. He's a guard trapped in a 7-footer's body. I think that's exactly what they've advertised him as. But I think he can help on the offensive end. And, he lacks a lot of bulk, but do you remember another player that was big for us that was tall and lacked bulk? That was freshman Willie Reed. Now, people, don't freak out on me. Defensively, I think he does bring a lot of what freshman Willie Reed brought. I don't know about the blocking quite yet, but I saw a little bit, some flashes of that. I think he lacks the post skills on offense because, again, he's a guard in a 7-footer's body. I think he's far away a better ball handler and outside shooter. There were at least 4 or 5 plays in this game where Chicago State, you could see it where they hesitated. Whenever, you look at, I think there was one drive and it ended, the guy pulled into the lane and Picard cut him off and he kind of made a move and Picard still defended it really well and he just knocked down a tough shot. His length inside, I thought his length outside was helpful. He had 2 steals. We talked about that first one. And then I'll throw in where Chicago State drove the lane and tried to kick it out, and Picard's guarding the wing, and Picard just gets out there like this, and he's got his arms spread out, and you can see the passer have to adjust midair to get the ball anywhere else but Picard's body. And it ends up where the receiver of the pass cannot corral it and the ball goes out of bounds and it's Billiken ball. So I think his wingspan is just, it's so valuable for a team that lacks that rim protector. He makes teams second guess their ability to drive. And that'll allow our guards to not collapse on every drive. Or to have to double. You know what I mean? He's that has that help defense. And I think the bottom line for me is that Picard changes the equation for SLU on the defensive end. There is extra math that has to be done for the opposing team. Now, when Picard is playing more and there's more out there, more film on him out there, is there a sophomore slump, so to speak? Maybe, but I think he has the ability to cover so much ground so quickly. You saw, I think in the second half, he was at the top of the arc defending and the ball got by him and he saw a guy that was going into the post and he helped down and he got there in plenty of time. So I really think his mobility makes him more, I think I honestly would give his minutes to Anya. I know much respect to Anya. I think Picard makes it difficult with his defense to stay off the floor. And offensively, again, he adds another 6'11" dude with vision. Again, he's got guard skill set. He made a really nice quick pass to help break the press in the second half, and got the hockey assist on the play, which obviously isn't actually a score. But I love the guy. I thought he was tons of fun to watch. Very, Steph Van Bussel, but can play vibes. Come in and give you energy, give you a different look, and I want to see more of it.
If you're peeling minutes away from Anya to get him more playing time, do you?
Yeah, that was hubris. I don't believe in that. So, I think Picard has to play. I think he has to play. I don't know where his minutes come from, but I think if you're struggling to stop anything, if the defense is struggling, Picard needs to be that guy off the bench immediately.
I certainly think you could find a few minutes for him out of Avila's minutes, just kind of given that he's not at 100%, and there are going to be situations and games where he can kind of take it easy a little bit.
Yeah.
Anya at times, sure. Like maybe you put him in for certain late offensive plays where you don't want to risk Anya going to the free throw line. You know, like we used to have to do with.
Picard doesn't really shoot. Picard didn't really shoot free throws well in this one, but again, he hasn't had time to really.
I'm convinced he should be a better free throw shooter than Anya. I'm willing to make that bet. A sub 50% free throw shooter. So yeah, I certainly think there are situations where you can find minutes for him there.
Yeah. And you can find late game if you want to sub defense for offense, like I talked about in the first half. You want to take Avila out to protect him, put in Picard with Anya.
Yeah.
Now you've got two guys that have long arms and big hands, and that maybe they can't shoot free throws because of those big hands, but they sure as shit can block shots.
Right.
Alter shots.
I think your overall argument is pretty compelling, though. It seems.
Come on, Shirts. I know you're watching. Michael, I know you watch the show. Talk to your brother. Let's go.
We've got something here.
I don't know. I don't know if we want to talk schedule yet. I think there was. I don't know. This game overall, I thought there were so many things in that late second half that it gives me hope, I think, and it gave me good vibes. I do want to get into schedule, and I think there's something to be said about playing teams that would name value that aren't that good. I mean, I don't know. You can decide whether we talk scheduling or not. I don't care at this point. I just was kind of mad in the moment.
I understand, Zach. I mean, do you?
I can read. I can just go ahead and I can go ahead and I can just diatribe it.
Why don't you do that, and then we'll see if there's a conversation here.
Yeah, if you want to get in the comments and tell me I'm off my fucking rocker, go ahead. I talked in the Discord because there was talk about why is DePaul winning games, and that's what I asked, and pointed out that DePaul scheduled poor, like they scheduled bad teams, and you look at their schedule, and I mean the names aren't bad, right? And I think it's about I wonder if this team could have benefited from easing into the transition with a schedule like DePaul, given what we now know is kind of the NCAA tournament's not necessarily the goal this year. We see that that's not going to happen. So I mean, my question is, if NCAA tournament wasn't necessarily the drop dead goal, then why did we schedule like it was? So what was the goal for this season? Was it, so the goals, I don't want to say just one goal, right? 10 out of 10, no notes. Like, this has been an unbelievable season. Josh Schertz is the man, would be NCAA second weekend. A stretch goal for this team would have been the NCAA tournament. So if that's your stretch goal, why aren't you scheduling as if you don't necessarily think you can make the tournament? You think you could make the tournament, but you don't necessarily think it's a probability. So if you schedule light, you get down the road and maybe you peak in conference and kind of take care of a lot in conference and maybe get to that tournament final, maybe win that final. And the stretch, or the bottom line minimum, obviously then if the NCAA tournament isn't a main goal or the goal, would be A10 top 4 and basically re-energizing the fan base, getting the season ticket holders back in the seats, capturing a little bit of of excitement with the city, getting people invested again back in the arena, building up attendance locally. So I think in that, if that's the bottom line minimum, I think scheduling teams with names like Mercer or your Belmonts, the teams that have these, that you bring in fans are like, oh yeah, I remember that one team from that one run 10 years ago. I remember that name. I've seen that logo before. I want to go see that game. Like, there are a ton of fans that see it like that rather than the numbers. And I think if you want to recapture that local vibe, like, you've got to put on an entertaining product and win games at home. Obviously play your kind of tough games on the road, because I've seen it where students aren't watching road games. The majority of students aren't watching road games. They're there for the party of the game and have fun. So, like, you win your games at home, that's all the students remember. So I do think, again, if your goal is the A10 top 4 and maybe an NIT bid as an achievable goal, I think absolutely, like, you build up a resume of wins and you have a marketable superstar in Robbie Avila, who, like, that's the NIT now. The NIT is, can you sell tickets? That's what that is now. It's not a true second tier tournament. So I really do think that you can play some lower competition with the names that people would recognize. That would be like, okay, I'm going to go see that team, but maybe they've fallen on hard times. Maybe they've got a bad net. That's fine. You get your team healthy, working together, win some games, build that local buzz, that attendance at Shavitz. And I think perhaps SLU was ahead of itself in trying to get that national brand back and use that Robbie Avila name, that Josh Hurts name, to get that national attention, when you have to worry about home first. You have to worry about the people that are paying to get in the gate, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of, like, I think the connection between SLU and the fan base and locals is so dysfunctional that the national brand needs to take a back seat at the moment and rebuild that local brand. I think with the AD and the school being in kind of a financial crisis, there's a lot of talk about layoffs. They laid off 300 people, right? We talked about how the Travis Ford buyout would affect things, the student shortage, or the enrollment miscalculation, or whatever you want to call it. I really think the AD in school could have benefited from selling tickets, concessions, merchandise to a team that is playing well against some shitty teams with good names. And because, like, teams don't, there are a lot of fans that don't know the difference between 243 Valpo or 231 or 231 Mercer versus a 100, 200 KP team like Samford or IPFW.
Right.
Valpo and Mercer sound great, right? Like, that sounds like a fun game. Nobody cares about Samford and IPFW as names. So if you're going to get shitty teams, like, just get the name that brings people in. He talked about kind of the Ken Pom and how, this schedule doesn't look good on name value, but the numbers are there. And I think there might be a disconnect between the goal and how the goal was achieved or set out to be achieved. And that's kind of my rant on scheduling. I don't like next year. I think Ken Pom numbers, like, absolutely, because you cannot waste Robbie Avila without an NCAA tournament. But I think this year it should have been about, making this team marketable again.
So sacrifice some of the underlying metrics for a little more name and gate.
Yeah.
Name recognition, gate potential.
I mean, I don't even think, like, Lowell. I think Lowell is a decent one. Like, to me, when I see UMass Lowell, it rings a bell in my head. And again, I'm a sicko. I know all these teams. But, like, Jackson State is not exactly one that's going to bring people out. I'm trying to remember who is Quinnipiac is a great example, I think, of this season of a team that's fallen on hard times, but is a name that you're like, oh yeah, I remember him from that one run in the NCAA, or like that time they were in the NCAA tournament a couple years in a row. Mm-hmm. That's a team that's a college basketball team when you think of college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree completely. I think if had the staff known just how injured they would be and how much adversity they'd be facing, they'd probably worry a little bit less about the numbers this year. Looking at DePaul's schedule, for an example, they played their first 7 games at home. They played a lot of teams like Eastern Illinois, Northern Illinois, Valpo, like you said before, teams that a lot of people from Chicago go to, or where graduates of those schools end up in Chicago. And so I think there's a lot to be said there. St. Louis is a little funny when it comes to D1 geography because we don't really have a whole lot of D1 programs that are nearby. Like so living in Cincinnati, it's made me realize that because there are 5 or 6 cities within a 100-mile radius of Cincinnati. And in addition to that, there's a lot of other, colleges that aren't far away. Your Miami, Ohio's and things like that. Northern Kentucky, just across the river. Obviously, Xavier and UC in the same city. There are way more options within a 100-mile radius than St. Louis has. St. Louis, you really have to go like 4 hours in any direction before you get to Indianapolis, Memphis, Chicago, Kansas City, to where you kind of have more options there. So we don't have kind of the immediate ones. We have a couple newer D1 teams like
I would have been totally
SIUE.
good. I would have been totally good bringing in an SIUE, Lindenwood.
Every time that we've brought in some of these, like kind of the no names, right? Because I think you're right in that casual fans really do not know many teams anymore. They're going to recognize names that have been in the tournament, and they're going to recognize power conference teams. But outside of that, I think you either really need to be focused on what's going to get the most people through the gate or what's going to do the best for our schedule, right? And we obviously went for the metrics this year without having many options in terms of scheduling. But I've often said, like, why are we playing some team nobody's ever heard of from Florida or Texas or whatever instead of SEMO, Kansas City, SIUE, Lindenwood? I know we did play SIUE notoriously.
Did we? I don't remember that.
We've been good about playing Carbondale a lot. Missouri State, we used to kind of play a lot. So we just don't have as many options nearby.
But if you want to buy game, like I think I'd rather bring in Linden. Like I'm not like this is not a gateway drug to the Missouri Valley Conference talk.
No, not at all.
This is purely buy games. I am for sure okay. SIUE, I believe they would ask for a home and home now that they beat us. But I think Lindenwood absolutely. SEMO, Lindenwood. Did I say Lindenwood twice? I did, didn't I? I've Maryville will go D1 eventually. I would be fine bringing them in and kicking their ass up and down the court. Again, this is asserting your dominance locally, and also. I think it gets asses in the seats, and that is vital right now to the athletic department. And losing is not going to do it. Like it's you. Like I would have preferred to play all those 8 games at home or whatever. Like I don't think that field of 68 game. That does nothing for me. I mean, now looking back, hindsight 2020, obviously. Where again, this is all hindsight 2020. Like that field of 68 national game. Like I could care less. Just bring get a D1. What that did was eliminate a D1 home opener, and that was sad. That was really sad.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not gonna yell at church for that. Like again, you're trying to figure out. You're coming in and you've got a schedule that's half made by a guy who was checked out completely.
Right.
And again, I know that's difficult, but I really was not happy that we opened up with a non D1 team. Like that's just depressing. Like it just felt like when you play those games, it's like Chaffetz is a living room. It's just it's just your living room because there's not enough people. You don't have to sit like this. You have to you have all the room in the world, and you're just like, oh, this is just easy listening. It's like Kenny G. I think we're going to skip this next part because it really didn't end up going anywhere in the notes. Because we kind of got into it. Again, it's about the goals, and honestly, I don't know where we're at this point. I certainly think, like, I think there's a lot of talk about whether this is a failure. Like if Shirts is, I don't think there's actually been that kind of talk. I think whether this season is a failure, right? And I don't even think I want to know, was the first, quarter of the season a failure, right? And how do you go about reaching your goal for the second quarter? How do you go about fixing it to reach your third quarter goal and your fourth quarter goal? So I'm interested to see how that works. And I think today was a right step for them.
I have a hard time calling it a failure. I would call it an incomplete.
No, well, I just meant for the quarter. Like the quarter's complete. First quarter of the season.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just say it's an incomplete. They They
didn't turn in the assignment? That's even worse.
They didn't get an F. They were sick. They had a parent die or something happened.
Was it Jaden? Somebody said, was it Jaden Shirt's 21st birthday with how sick this team's been getting?
So that's why, I mean, this is just, it's an incomplete to me. I mean, like 7 hurt or sick or whatever players out of 13. It's just like, it's overwhelming. And I honestly think that factor is being a lot underrated. So it's an incomplete for me.
What is going on up at Illinois State? Because I'm just running through kind of the numbers here and I am very confused.
It's a weird team, Zach. So this is who we play Sunday, December 15th. Thankfully, we finally have a full week off to kind of rest up a little bit.
I mean, I don't know about you, but like I see this team getting more hurt in practice, so I'm a little worried.
Well, this is finals week, so maybe the practices will be a little less intense. And I think the coaches know at this point, like they're pretty limited as to what their options even are, given how hurt this team is. But Illinois State's 5-4. They've got wins over North Dakota State, Ohio, Trinity Christian, which is a lower division school, UAB, and Pacific. They've got losses to Tennessee Martin, McNeese State, who we know is pretty good, George Washington, and then they lost an overtime thriller down at Belmont the other night. Their head coach is Ryan Peden, who's now in his 3rd year. He hasn't done much there yet. He went 15-17 last year, including that loss at SLU. They've got a pretty balanced attack, but not a ton of size. Their leading scorer is a 5'11 sophomore, Johnny Kinzinger, who averages 14.3 a game. He's closely followed by a 6'9", 290 sophomore, Chase Walker, the one exception to my comment about size, I will admit. 14.2 points a game, 6.6 rebounds. 6'2 senior Dalton Banks and 6'6 sophomore Ty Pence, who at one point had an offer from SLU. Both of those guys scored just under 11 a game. Unlike some of our other recent previews, Zach, I can honestly say that this is an excellent shooting team. They shoot over 80% from the free throw line, which is top 10 in the country. Over 40% from 3, which is top 15 in the country. They're 58% inside the arc, which is top 50. They were a terrible shooting team last year. Their coach was very upfront about what he was targeting in the portal in the offseason, and it looks like he got it. He wanted shooting. And you'll also notice that 4 of 5 starters were freshmen last year. He preaches retention and long-term development. So he's getting it coming in, and he's getting it from the guys who he's kind of coaching up. They protect the ball. They're looking for the best shot possible, and then they're sprinting back to the other end to set up on defense. Not a good offensive rebounding at all. It's not their game. It's just not what they're looking for. They don't create many steals. They don't block shots. It's a very conservative style. Peden was an assistant under Chris Holtmann at Butler and Ohio State, and I think that really is what informs his style, right? They're an efficient shooting offense, and it's just a very sound, conservative, stay-at-home defense on the other end. So there's a lot to admire on paper about what they're trying to do and how they're building that with a relatively young roster, but they've just still got a ways to go. They're 145 in the net rankings. Not bad, but could be better. Some subpar losses. My guess is that their style is going to translate into a pretty close game, and that SLU just has to play a better 40-minute game than we've been seeing lately, right? Take good shots, protect the ball, rebound. We can't afford to kind of fall into some of the same patterns that we've seen recently. This is a road game. And it's not against a great team, but it's against kind of an up-and-coming team that's really kind of falling into their identity. So, man, you can't really call it a trap game. It's a challenging game. It's it's a team that is not fully baked yet, but I think we've got to win this, Zach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I think you go into every game saying you got to win this one. But, I mean, I hate road games. I think we're going to get back to this shtick for me. Road games suck. That's what. Oh, also, we should start scheduling teams that have to, like, take the longest route to get here. Just teams that are just it's impossible travel. We need to get that. Like, just wear them out. That's my new scheme.
Wear them out.
Yeah, with travel. Like, we got to travel the A10. Like, I think that doesn't help. But anyway, right. I like where the team finished that Chicago State game. I think that the fact that they don't block many shots is very. I think that's very beneficial for us. We'll see how well that ages. Also, the steals. I am very scared that they're top 15 in the nation with threes.
Yeah.
We may be giving them a lot of good shots.
Yeah. I don't know. They're a slower team, right? Like, this is not a very high octane team, so it's not going to be like piling up points in short order. They're just kind of an efficient team. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see play out.
All right. I will not be making it, unfortunately. I'll have to catch it on TV. Let's whip around the A10, Pete. Monday the 2nd, Rhode Island beat Yale 84-78. I'm still not sold on Rhode Island. Tuesday the 3rd, Northeastern 82, LaSalle 68. George Mason 74, UNC Asheville 52. Princeton 77, St. Joe's 69. Nice. Dayton 77. Wait, really?
Yes, I put these back to back for a reason.
Dayton 77, Western Michigan 69. That was a nice night. 76 for Loyola, 54 for Eastern Michigan. St. Peter's 62, Duquesne 59. Best wishes to Johnny, by the way. Bluff blog.
Yeah, the Bluff blog.
Yeah, best of wishes to him, man. Get better.
Yeah.
Wednesday the 4th. Even though I do really like watching Duquesne suffer, I'm sorry. I really, yeah. Best wishes, man. Duquesne suffering is good. Johnny, not so much. Wednesday the 4th, St. Bonnie's 64, Bucknell 47. Central Connecticut 73, UMass 69, American 81, George Washington 71 in overtime, Fordham 84, Fairleigh Dickinson 75, VCU 89, Georgia Southern 54. Run us through the weekend.
Friday the 6th, Duquesne got on the win column again, 80 to Delaware 66. Davidson squeaked one out over Charleston Southern 73-72. Saturday the 7th was a busy day for the A10. UMass Lowell, the new flagship, beat
UMass. That's UMass.
UMass.
That's UMass had 96 and UMass Amherst 83.
I still didn't want to people.
Hey, I'm the captain now.
That's right. Rhode Island 69, Providence 63. You're not convinced yet, Zach?
Nope.
All right.
Look. What's his name? Kim English. Sorry.
Kim English.
Yeah, the texting and driving guy. People forget about that. I forgot about that. No, I mean, Kim English stays losing in the Atlantic 10. So
yeah. Loyola 74, South Florida 72. It's funny, they squeaked those out, but both Rhode Island and Loyola are 2 of the 8, I think, 7, right? Are they down to 7 undefeated teams left in D1? It's another one drops every day, but those 2 are hanging on. They really haven't played the toughest schedules yet, but still. Dayton 86, Lehigh 62.
Lehigh is one of those teams. Lehigh is a team that you would bring in to play at home. That somebody would be like, "Oh yeah, Lehigh. They
beat Duke."
Yeah, they were that 16 seed that was awesome. Yeah, like that's what I'm talking about.
George Mason 76, Tulane 64.
Another one. Tulane.
St. Bonaventure 65, Buffalo 55. George Washington 78, Old Dominion 70, and then St. Joe's 82, LaSalle 68 in the Big 5. championship.
That
did
confused
not
the
go
hell
off.
out of me, by the way.
I know.
I was very confused.
Yeah, one of those odd non-conference conference games. On Sunday the 8th, number 2 Auburn put 98 on Richmond, who scored 54, and then Fordham won at home against Maine 87-72.
Well, I was going to ask you about recruiting, but I got no notes here. But I feel like we need to talk about 2 men in a garden, mostly because it's what I would have for recruits when they come in to visit in their care package. But also, I would put it in Kellen Thames's locker, which apparently is happening, allegedly.
It is happening. It was in the post game today. Apparently, it came up that Kellen Thames is now using the same tactic as Fred Thatch a few years back, and 2 men in a garden pickles are coming in handy, I guess, for him during these kind of cramping issues to kind of give him. I'm not really sure the science behind it, Zach. I don't really remember that.
I think
Something
it has
about
a salt and electrolyte.
Yeah,
I think, yeah,
right. Like, so the vinegar, the saltiness of it. So that's pretty cool that it's happening again. I did like a little reaction shot from Robbie Avila when that came up because he wasn't aware of it. He was kind of like,
Wait, what
surprised
happened?
by that. In the post game press conference, they were asking Kellen about his cramps.
Oh,
And he was talking about it, and Avila seemed surprised
that they
by it.
used pickles.
Yeah, he was kind of like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah,
A little bit
it's
confused by it.
hydration is one of those things where I've gone down rabbit holes and but also refueling, and you'll see like endurance athletes actually just eat syrup, and they'll put syrup in bottles, and they'll like there's one specific one that when he's on riding his bike, his nutrition is syrup, Canadian syrup, maple syrup.
Just the pure uncut Canadian stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Keeps them good.
Hey, whatever works. And
High sugar.
if it's working for Kellen Thames, it's working for me because I always have their pickles in my
100%.
fridge as well. And it's either in the form of the pickling pouches, which I've gone on about ad nauseum, or their pickles themselves, which I've said keep getting better and better. You should try them out for yourself. Go to twomeninagarden.com. Get the pickles, get the pickling pouches, get different varieties. Whatever you're into, if you're into the traditional dill, the hot and spicy, no matter what you want, they've got it. twomeninagarden.com. Check them out right now.
It's the women's basketball, man.
Mm-hmm.
It was a tough week.
It was a tough week.
Tough teams. Obviously, you would like to see the Billikens hang around better than a 91-66 loss to Murray State. I want to talk about that Norfolk State game eventually because I think I really do think SLU showed some flashes, at least by the box score. But let's start out with that Murray State game because I think this was really disheartening because you really don't want to see a game get away from you anymore. Like, we've seen that, and it continues to kind of happen where the Billikens play really well for 3 quarters and then the game just gets completely out of hand.
This was a weird one too, Zach, because Murray State jumped out to a 10-0 start, and a few minutes later it was 13-10. SLU actually ended the quarter with an 18-14 lead, and then the lead fluctuated in the second, but they went into halftime up 6. But in the third quarter, Murray State couldn't miss, and SLU couldn't make anything. It carried into the fourth with the Racers shooting 67% from the field and 80% from 3. SLU shooting just 21% and 8%, 1 for 12. So the tables completely turned, and it just got worse and worse and worse as the game went on. I mean, you're right. It just really got away from them completely. SLU scored 24 points in the second half, which is less than Murray State had in either quarter of the second half. They had 27 in the third and 28 in the fourth. We knew this was a good offense, Zach, but the way the game started, you kind of thought SLU might actually have some hope here.
Yeah. I mean, third quarter, Murray State, third quarter, Murray State just can't miss.
No, they couldn't miss.
It felt like that in it's felt like that in a lot of games,
right?
For the Bills.
That third quarter, that elusive third quarter.
Yeah.
We knew that Murray State played fast and averaged 87 points per game coming into this. We knew they had 4 starters who averaged in kind of the mid-high teens, and eventually all of those things happened in this game. They got to 87 points. All 4 of those starters got into the double-digit figures. It's tempting to blame the 21 turnovers, but the Bills had, but they did force 23 turnovers at the same time. So I don't think that's the story here. It just kind of.
I mean, it would be nice if we only turned it over 15 times.
It'd be nice.
I mean, that would probably be a big help. But yeah.
It really came down to 2 things as far as I can tell in this game. It was the shooting, it was the rebounding. We could not find our shot in the second half. Murray State's defense, I do think, got a little bit better. I didn't think they're a great defensive team, but they really do hit the glass. And SLU, that's been a deficiency all season long. Murray State was plus 15 in rebounding on the game. And when your shooting dries up, that gap feels worse and worse and worse as the game goes on.
Let's see. Where are
Kennedy Calhoun?
Yeah, Kennedy Calhoun. I mean, Kennedy Calhoun has done her absolute best, man, to really try to fill that gap left by Martinez.
She has, and in this game, she ties a program record with 9 steals. But she was minus 26 in 38 minutes, which is pretty rough. I do agree that she's doing a lot of the things Martinez had. She's a different player. She does kind of fill that stat sheet a little bit, but being a little bit smaller, not being like Martinez just kind of had that unpredictable speed, I would put it. Like she would get going downhill and you never quite knew what she was going to do with the ball. Calhoun doesn't quite have that. She doesn't quite operate in the same way. It feels like there's just a little bit something missing in the backcourt, with just her and then mostly newcomers alongside her, right? And then trying to get the ball to Peyton Kennedy out on the wing. I don't know. I just think it's a different dynamic, and I do give her a lot of credit for being pretty difficult as a defender on the other team's opposing point guard. It's just a matter of some of the other offensive limitations I think she might have.
Yeah. Tierra Simon has really been kind of one key kind of big on the inside for this team. And she had 12 and 10, a double-double. But again, she's alone underneath. We really could benefit from Trianta Philly or Hydera coming along.
Or Maya Glanton.
Yeah,
don't
Maya
know what's
Glanton.
going on there.
She is not.
Nook Shavers. We haven't seen her much at all this year. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why Tierra Simon is having to shoulder this load herself. 12 and 10 is great, but there really were no other rebounders going up against Murray State, and the size became an issue after a while.
Yeah. Again, I think there's. I want to talk about overall this team in this year and until at the end of this next game, but I just kind of want you to kind of finish off here with Murray State.
Yeah, so Peyton Kennedy led SLU with 20. She had three three-pointers early, but missed something like 8 in a row before hitting a 4th late in the game. But, Zach, there have been a few times this season where we've told you that the game was closer than it looks. That was not the case here. Murray State dominated the second half. It seems like when things kind of break down at one end, they fall apart at both ends, right? So when Murray State started stringing some makes together, SLU seemed like they just started rushing the offense and taking bad shots, and things just spiraled from there. And that's one of the things that we can get to when we sum up the other game, but it just seems like kind of as soon as things break down on one end, the whole game gets away from them.
Don't we have a sports psychology department? We have 3 people on staff, so let's
yeah, I think we do.
Let's work on both these teams' ability to stop themselves when they start, kind of when they fall into quicksand. We'll go back to that. The 75-66 loss against Norfolk State in Washington D.C. for the Coaches versus Racism Round Ball Classic. Pete, what? This game was only available for people that owned Samsung TVs.
Nothing makes sense anymore in the age of streaming, Zach.
The points are made up, everything's made up, and the points don't matter.
Yeah, I have no idea. I wasn't able to watch this one anyway because it was at the same time as my son's game. But yeah, unfortunately, Zach.
It's by the way, it's kind of an interesting experience to like be working out and not necessarily watch the game, but just follow the box score because it is like it's kind of it's funny because when was the last time you just followed a box score? Like what 2003, 2005? So
Yeah.
it's very funny to go back to that because you were paying attention to the box score because you had to watch it on your desktop computer in the office. Like, so that's an experience that has not lived in like 15 years,
Like just watching a box score. Yeah.
like 20 years almost now at this point. But it's just very funny, and it was kind of a weird experience. And I as much as I would have preferred to watch it, it was really interesting when SLU started to come back in this game because you were able to see you kind of were able to put it in your head a little bit, just actually focusing on the box score.
We'll just be thankful that we don't, have more games on Flow Sports or anything like
Oh
that.
God, that is. I mean, I think absolutely 100%. By the way, I want to get on my soapbox. If SLU is in a tournament that is on Flow Sports, it is an absolute unconscionable decision. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
a word. That's it. That's
it
the
is.
word. It is an absolute slap in the face of the fans. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they will. They haven't yet. They've done an awesome job of finding tournaments with actual TV. I know women's basketball is a different animal altogether, but I think it's great that we've strayed away from Flow Sports unless it's a outside of our control for a true road game.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. In this game on Samsung TVs, apparently, SLU outscored Norfolk State by
I tried to see
7.
if Amazon Fire Stick had a Samsung app. I was like hoping, you know how like you can get the Roku app
Yeah.
on other. Yeah, I was all for naught. All for naught.
So they outscored them by 7 in the final quarter, but it was too little too late after getting out to an early deficit and never really being able to close the gap. Mia Bergstrom, Zach, was once again the bright spot for SLU, scored 21 points on 7 made three-pointers in 14 attempts. It's a new high point total for her, as she just keeps getting more confident. The SLU, I didn't realize this, the freshman single game points record is 31, set by Mia Johnson. Back
Yeah.
in
Oh yeah, Mia Johnson.
405. Yeah.
Mia Johnson then left to play or no, she transferred in from Michigan State, or she went to Michigan State after SLU.
It would
I think
have to
she.
be after because she was a freshman.
Okay, so no. Yeah, I think somehow she was involved with Michigan State. That's all I know.
Your memory is better than mine, and apparently her freshman year was my senior year. So maybe
She was very good. It was. I think that was another one of those shimmy Gray Miller runoffs. Like
Yeah.
did not mesh well.
so she ended up at Michigan State is what happened. Looking at her, I found her bio
Yep.
there. She went to SLU for 1 year, was Conference USA All Freshman team, and then transferred to Michigan State.
Before the
So
she was
we
in
only
the
had her for
portal
one
before the
season.
portal.
But anyway, so Bergstrom's
NIL
really going
must
to
have
have to
been
get
good.
hot to catch that record. Peyton Kennedy, Calhoun each scored 14. Calhoun added 6 assists, the most by a Billiken this season. Kennedy played 28 minutes as she attempts to get back up to full speed. Her shot has not looked the same since she's come back. I think she only hit 1 3 in this game, but she does still remain perfect from the free throw line this season. I'm convinced that I can't jinx it anymore, Zach, now that I've brought it up several times. And I think she's like around 40, 41, something like that.
Yeah,
Free throws.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm not jinxing it now. I just want to keep track of that. Tiara Simon led SLU with 11 rebounds again. Turnovers again, 22 of them were a problem. Overall shooting under 32% continue to be problems in the non-conference slate. Norfolk State capitalized and had 27 points off those turnovers compared to just 15 for SLU. There's your margin right there. It seems like a relevant statistic given that we lost by 11, right? SLU did win the rebounding battle, though. Norfolk State got the majority of their rebounds from just 2 players. So Tiara Simon and company were a little bit better in this game, Zach. So, 2 good teams. We warned you last week. It was just another tough couple games for SLU. Luckily, though, I think things get easier, but I don't know if you're worried kind of about the state of women's basketball and where they stand right now.
Yes. For this season, yes. I don't think they have the team. I don't think they have. I don't think. I think that they don't have all the pieces they need right now to be successful this season. I mean, I don't think you can be upset. Again, we talked about Maya Johnson was the last time somebody scored 31 points as a freshman by this team was Maya Johnson, 04-05. This program, again, I think there's a lot to be, like, you have to, the context is really key. And the context is that this women's basketball program has been irrelevant in like the most average way possible for its entire existence up until 10 years ago, I guess, when Lisa Stone showed up, right? Mm-hmm. And Lisa Stone did a good job raising the floor, put us in the NIT more than one time. First coach, I think, to do that. And, you brought in Tillett, and I was highly critical of the Tillett hire at the time. I thought it was ridiculous that you didn't go out and get someone with more experience. But, I mean, look, you can't just move the goalpost. She got to an NCAA tournament. She won an NIT. Is the goal to win here? Like, is the goal to get to the NCAA tournament? Yeah. So you get some grace. Like, every coach has a 4-year extension pretty much built in to an NCAA tournament bid. I would imagine that the women's basketball team has an auto renew right now for NIT bid, or an NIT championship. We'll say it's later in the NIT, right? Obviously, I think you want more out of your team than just getting into the NIT because we've talked about it. The NIT is no longer, on the women's side, it's a little more of a serious competition than on the men's side. But I think, I think Tillett has earned, she has reached a goal that is set. She has reached a goal set by her boss. And that deserves at least one transition year, I think. 2 transition years. But, I mean, you've got a freshman in, help me out here. You've got Bergstrom. You've got a freshman in Bergstrom who is an absolute sniper. You've got another freshman in Shantaria Anuma. Yeah, Sean Anuma, who, again, she's very much had that Amari McCautry to her. I think she's got a lot of Amari McCautry in her. Makes some tough decisions, but has shown flashes of being a really, really talented young basketball player. And I think you've got, again, Brooklyn Gray coming back for another season. You've got players that you can build around and get a year older and a year better. Yes, you lose Peyton Kennedy, but the transfer portal is there. I think you have to see what Tillett does in the transfer portal this coming year. You have to see what you have in Rita Nazario, even though she hasn't got into a game. I mean, it took Bergstrom 7 games really to get 5 games to really get into the swing of things and make her presence. I think it was that 6 points in a minute that really launched her into the spotlight here. So I think there's a lot to be excited about, and there's a lot to be. I mean, it's like that freshman year a little bit with Majerus. You saw a lot of good things or maybe more of the situation year, when you got to watch the freshmen grow. And maybe there's not 4 or 5 freshmen that year, but there's 2. And I think those are solid pieces to build around. Women's basketball on the college level is still a lot about 4-year players. I mean, it's all for it's still less about the portal, right? Most of them are 99% of women's basketball players in college are going to be 4-year, right? Especially below that top 10 team, so you still got to develop players. You can get players from the portal, but you still got to develop players, much more than I think in men's basketball. So a lot to be excited about, but cautious. And certainly Tillett has earned some grace. I would say, I think I said that it would be like Kalish after Kalish making an Elite 8, right? That gives him some grace. You scale that for expectation and history, and you get a NCAA tournament and an NIT championship.
Yeah.
I mean, she gets 4 years. She gets a grace year before we start saying what's going on here. You know, she gets, you know, and I still think this A10 is not that difficult. I still think this team has a chance to make an NCAA tournament still. Dayton's still bad. So as long as Dayton's still bad, there's an open door. Obviously, Rhode Island's put together good teams. I think Bonaventure's trying to get back to where they were since they brought back that new coach. But I think there's an open door, and I think this team can still do it. And I think Brett Jolly Comedy Hour said, you know, Tillett's put together again. We talk about the schedule with the men's side. I think women's side, totally different scheduling. I think Tillett understands that this is a true one bid league right now. And yes, at some point, this is going to have to get to a point where we're reloading and not rebuilding. But that's still a long way to go, because this is still a team that just 10 years ago, or I mean, even just 3 years ago, had never been to an NCAA tournament in its existence. So, yeah, I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I this year is unique in that the A10 does have a big three that's kind of formed with Richmond, St. Joe's, and George Mason all in the top 40 in the net. They're all solid this year, but SLU has played a brutal schedule. Their net rating is low; it's in the 200s. It doesn't really, I don't think, reflect how good they could or should be. But they've been dangerous as the season has gone on, February, March, the last couple of years. So maybe they've got that again. I think it's going to be a taller order this year, just given a little more turnover in personnel. But I guess the good news, Zach, is when you look ahead, this next game, like the men, they've got a full week until they play Ohio. The Bobcats are 2-5. They've got wins over GW and a lower division team. Kennedy Watkins is their best player. She's a 5'10 senior guard, actually from Baldwin. She went to Marquette High School. She averages 16.4 points per game, and she can score from anywhere, although she's kind of a below average free throw shooter. She's a pretty good shooter.
Our ass.
They're not a good rebounding or shot blocking team. SLU has been at a disadvantage, obviously, inside a lot this season, but that can't be the case in this game. SLU's got to take care of business here. These next 3 games, Ohio and the 2 after that, are SLU's chance to kind of take a winning streak into A10 play after a brutal non-conference. So, as you say, Zach, this is your classic finals week game, and they've got a couple more after that before they start conference play on December 29th. So, would like to see them get on the right track as they head into the new year for sure.
Women's soccer. Colleen Corbin is one and done with the Billikens. I'm reading a lot between the lines of her leaving Wyoming as a head coach and heading to K-State immediately after 1 year. I mean, if this doesn't signal dumpster fire at Wyoming, I don't know what does.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it had to be something like that, right? She's a good coach. She seems well respected. I know Shields had nice things to say about her. She's replacing Mike DeBini, the program's first ever head coach at K-State. He said he's leaving to focus on his health. It seems like maybe it was kind of a mutual decision. K-State only started their program in 2016, but they are obviously a power conference program, so they have real resources. Katie Shields said, K-State made a tremendous decision in hiring Colleen. I'm grateful for the time we spent together here at SLU. She's an elite recruiter that brings passion and intensity to helping student athletes fulfill their potential. Her diversity of experience and expertise will be a tremendous asset to the K-State program, and I look forward to watching her build something special in Manhattan.
Either that or this was planned.
Could have been.
I mean, if reading that or hearing you talk about Mike Dibney, the program's first coach leaving to focus on health and it not being a firing. I mean, that sounds, yeah, I don't know. And maybe Mike Dibney needed one more year and Colleen didn't want to stay in Wyoming. I don't know.
Right.
A couple transfer news out of the women's side. Becca Wolterman, Ula Sharp, and Addie Lang are transferring. Hannah Larson might use her last year of eligibility. Still working on that decision. Her decision is whether or not to go pro, not transfer. I am deciding whether I should. Yeah, no, we'll talk about there apparently is an incoming soccer player. They have an incoming transfer that hasn't been announced yet. We will let them announce for themselves who it is, because, I mean, there's no reason to break somebody's announcement ahead of time.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's up to them to go first, and then
but our Twitter DMs, we appreciate Twitter DMs.
We'll talk about it next week for sure. On the men's soccer side, we've got some outgoing transfers as well. Marcos Moore, Cole Doherty, and Jack Sullivan are hitting the transfer portal. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't Marcos Moore like the number 1 overall player coming out of high school last season? And I think he was hurt all season, so he didn't play for SLU. I think they actually were probably counting on him as a kind of an offensive key piece for them, but we just never unfortunately got to see him play. Cole Doherty we saw a lot, Jack Sullivan a little bit, so these seem like pretty big departures, Zach.
Yeah, he was the 20. God, he hadn't played 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I guess it was a knee or something.
Because he was a sophomore this year.
Oh, he was. Oh.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I want to say he was a couple of years ago, like top.
But did he come in as a sophomore, or did he? No, he came in as a freshman. Gosh, buddy, good. Get your knee better, man.
Yeah,
that's brutal. Indoor track and field season is upon us. Friday the 6th at SIU Carbondale for the Saluki Fast Start. Again, no team scores, but love John Bell's Twitter feed. He's one of my favorite coaches, and I don't know him that well. I wish I did. I got to talk to him a little bit back in the day. And he does he helps us out with sending us stuff over with his team. So, but I would love to get to know him. Obviously, I'm a big runner. So, his Twitter feed's awesome. It keeps track of. He really does do a great job of keeping updated on team stuff. Pete, run us through the results for the men and the women.
Yeah, so it looks like SLU had about 20 personal bests at the event, maybe a little less, but on the men's side, Tristan Boatman won the shot put at 15.64 meters, his personal best, and number 2 all time at SLU. He threw 17.20 in the weight, number 3 all time at SLU. He's a transfer from Troy, so he's off to a great start in his Billiken career. Ethan Bryant had 4 PRs, all set in the heptathlon on Friday. On the women's side, Journey Amundsen won the triple jump at 12.11 meters and the long jump, where she just missed a school record at 5.81 meters. Izzy Dunbar had a few PRs in the women's pentathlon as well. So just to highlight a few, but check out his Twitter feed because there were many more personal bests. And he's a good follow if you're a SLU fan.
Yep. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, comment, all that good stuff. Thank you all, especially if you made it to this point in the podcast. Go Bills.
Go Bills.